Diabetic retinopathy and hypertensive retinopathy is a disease of retina caused by microangiopathy due to long-term effect of diabetes leading to progressive damage of the retina and blindness. It is most common cause of severe bilateral visual loss in working age group. Risk factors: age at diagnosis of diabetes, duration of diabetes, poor metabolic control, pregnancy, hypertension, nephropathy, others like smoking, obesity, hyperlipidemia, anemia. Out of these, one risk factor which is most important is duration of diabetes. Pathophysiology. Diabetic retinopathy is a microangiopathy primarily affecting the precapillary arterioles, capillaries, and venules, and postcapillary venules. The basic component of damaging process are microvascular occlusion and leakage. So basically it affects the precapillary arterioles, capillaries and venules. So the damage it causes to capillaries are degeneration and the loss of pericytes in the capillary, thickening of the basement membrane, damage and proliferation of the endothelial cells. Hematologically, it causes deformation of RBC and rouleau formation, increased plasma viscosity, increased platelet stickiness and aggregation. This flow chart is showing the pathophysiology of the damage of the microvasculature in the retina. So there is a capillary damage and there are some hematological changes. So because of these two things, capillary changes and the hematological changes, there is a microvascular occlusion. Microvascular means precapillary arterioles, capillaries and the venules. So there is a microvascular occlusion followed by retinal capillary non-perfusion. If there will be occlusion, there will be non-perfusion of the retina. There will be tissue hypoxia. There will be resultant retinal ischemia. So when there is a ischemia of the retina, there will be release of vascular endothelial growth factor which will cause neovascularization. So this neovascularization, if it occurs on the optic disc, it will be called as NVD, which means neovascular disc. NVE, which means neovascular elsewhere. NVA means neovascularization of the angle, and NVI, which is neovascularization of the iris. So NVD and NVE, which happens because of the release of the VEGF, which is vascular endothelial growth factor, by the ischemic retina, leads to, so is basically a neovascularization. So neovascularization anywhere in the eye is abnormal. They are abnormal blood vessels which are very fragile and they easily break. So if there is NVD or NVE, it will lead to pre-retinal hemorrhage, subhyaloid hemorrhage and vitreous hemorrhage. This is one flow chart. Another one is it can cause fibrovascular proliferation, fibroglial tissue proliferation, leading to contraction of the fibrovascular tissue. This will cause traction on the retina. This will lead to tractional retinal detachment. It can cause rhegmatogenous detachment also. So there can be a tractional retinal detachment as well as rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. So basically NVD, NVE are nothing but abnormal blood vessels, abnormal fragile blood vessels which can cause vitreous hemorrhage, it can cause subhyaloid hemorrhage, it can cause pre-retinal hemorrhage if they break. And it can cause, because there's a fibrovascular tissue proliferation, so they grow towards the vitreous. So what happens, they lead a traction on the retina, leading to the tractional retinal detachment. There can be somewhere hole formation. So there's a combination, there could be a combination of tractional retinal detachment with the rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. Now neovascularization in the angles of the eye or neovascularization of the iris, it can lead to neovascular glaucoma, which can cause secondary open angle glaucoma. Now again there's a fibrovascular tissue which will contract. So when they contract, it will cause secondary angle closure glaucoma, which obviously will rise the pressure of the eye, leading to, gradually it will lead to optic atrophy, and then it will become an absolute glaucoma or absolute eye. Now classification of diabetic retinopathy. Now this is important. It has been variously classified. Presently followed classification is as follow. So we have NPDR, which is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Second is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Third is diabetic maculopathy. Fourth is advanced diabetic eye disease. Now, non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Here we don't have a neovascular tissue on the retina. So here it is divided based on the appearance. There are four types, subtypes: mild NPDR, moderate NPDR, severe NPDR, and very severe NPDR. Um, Proliferative diabetic retinopathy, we have neovascularization. So this neovascularization, which are abnormal blood vessels, they're either on the disc or they are on the retina. Third, we have a diabetic maculopathy. So any changes in the macula in the form of edema or hard exudates is called, or ischemia is called diabetic maculopathy. And fourth is the last stage in the diabetic retinopathy, which is advanced diabetic eye disease. NPDR. Ophthalmoscopic features of NPDR include microaneurysms in the macular areas. So these are the earliest detectable lesion. Then retinal hemorrhages, which are of two types. Either it will be deep retinal hemorrhages, which will be seen in the as dot and plot hemorrhage, like a round blob of blood, or it can be superficial hemorrhage, which is seen as flame shaped. Now the question asked here is why it is flame shaped. It is flame shaped because when there is a rupture of the superficial blood vessels, the leaked blood, it spreads along the course of the nerve fiber layer, and hence it assumes the shape of a flame. So these are called, superficial hemorrhages are called flame shaped hemorrhages, and deep hemorrhages are called dot and blot hemorrhages. Hard exudates, these are waxy proteinaceous substances which are leaked from the blood vessel. They arrange in clumps or in sarcinate pattern. They are commonly seen in the macular area. Retinal edema, which is characterized by retinal thickening. Cotton wool spots. Cotton wool spots present anywhere are indicative of ischemic retina. So, if there are more number of cotton wool spots, like more than 8, there is a high risk of developing proliferative diabetic retinopathy, because cotton wool spots are direct indicator of ischemic retina. Venous abnormalities could be seen in the form of beading of the veins or looping of the veins or dilatation of the veins. Intraretinal microvascular abnormalities. So these are the features which we see in cases of NPDR. Microaneurysms, retinal hemorrhages, which can be deep and dot and blot hemorrhages or flame-shaped hemorrhage, hard exudates, retinal edema, cotton wool spots, venous abnormalities, and intraretinal microvascular abnormalities. NPDR classification. So, non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy is further subdivided as mild NPDR, moderate NPDR, severe NPDR, and very severe NPDR. So, in mild NPDR, there's at least one microaneurysm or intraretinal hemorrhage which can be seen. There can be hard or soft exudates which present. They may or may not be present. So, if we see a single microaneurysm, it will be labeled as a mild NPDR. Moderate NPDR. In moderate NPDR, there is a moderate level of microaneurysm seen or intraretinal hemorrhage is seen. There could be early mild intraretinal microvascular abnormalities. There could be or could not be hard or soft exudates present. Severe NPDR, it follows a rule of 4 is to 2 is to 1. So, 4 quadrants of severe microaneurysms or intraretinal hemorrhage, 2 quadrants of venous bleeding, and 1 quadrant of intraretinal microvascular abnormality will be present. So this means that in severe NPDR, in all the 4 quadrants, either we will see a lot of microaneurysms or we will see a lot of intraretinal hemorrhages. In at least 2 quadrants of the retina, we will see some venous bleeding, some abnormalities related to veins, and in at least one quadrant of the retina, we will see intraretinal microvascular abnormality. Such retina will be called as severe NPDR. Fourth, very severe NPDR. Any two of the following, 4 is to 2 is to 1 rule. So 4 quadrants of severe microaneurysms or intraretinal hemorrhage will be seen, 2 quadrants of venous bleeding will be seen, or 1 quadrant of intraretinal microvascular abnormality will be seen. So in very severe NPDR, any two of the following criteria will be present. In severe NPDR, one of the following criteria will be present. Proliferative diabetic retinopathy. The hallmark of proliferative diabetic retinopathy is neovascularization. These neovascular tissues are abnormal, fragile blood vessels. So, types of proliferative diabetic retinopathy. On the basis of high risk characteristics described by Diabetic Retinopathy Study Group, the PDR can be classified as below. PDR without high risk characteristics, which are called early PDR, and PDR with high risk characteristics, or they are called as advanced PDR. High risk characteristics of PDR are as follow. First, neovascularization of disc involving 1/4 to 1/3 of the disc area with or without vitreous hemorrhage or pre-retinal hemorrhage. Second, NVD less than 1/4 disc area with vitreous hemorrhage or pre-retinal hemorrhage. Third, neovascularization elsewhere more than half disc area with vitreous hemorrhage or pre-retinal hemorrhage. So these are the high risk criteria or characteristics of the PDR. Here this picture, picture A, you can see there are few small tiny dots right at the macula. There are microaneurysms. So this is a case of mild NPDR because apart from the microaneurysms, I don't see anything else. So this picture A is mild NPDR change. Now if you see the picture B, there towards the upper side, you can see multiple microaneurysms are there. There would be some microaneurysms which is not very evident here, maybe in other quadrants also. So this is a case of moderate NPDR. Picture C, it is so clear. You can see multiple aneurysms and multiple hemorrhages, dot and blot hemorrhages here along the arcades. You can see the yellowish exudates, which are actually hard exudates, both along the superotemporal and inferotemporal branches. So this becomes a case of severe NPDR. Now, if you see the picture D, you can see there's so much of hemorrhage, so much of epiretinal hemorrhage around the optic disc. There are some dot and blot hemorrhages. There is a certain pattern of hard exudates around macula. So this is a case of a very severe NPDR. Just from the picture itself, you can make out it is a case of very severe NPDR. Now, if you see picture E, and if you see along the inferotemporal arcade, you can see a front of blood vessel at towards the end. Now, this front of vessel is nothing but a neovascular tissue. So this becomes a case of early PDR. Now, picture F. Here you can see it's not very clear. There is some neovascularization along the inferotemporal arcade. There would be a lot of neovascularization, so this is a high risk PDR. And picture G is showing exudative diabetic maculopathy, which means there will be some edema at the macula. So if the OCT is done at the macula, it will show the thickening of the macula. OCT is nothing but an optical cross section of the macula. So this was the picture of diabetic retinopathy. Diabetic maculopathy. Diabetic maculopathy is important because it directly affects the vision, because it affects the central part of the retina, which is fovea. It may be associated with NPDR or PDR. So it can be superimposed with either NPDR or it can be superimposed with PDR. The diabetic macular edema occurs due to increased permeability of the retinal capillaries. It is termed as clinically significant macular edema if one of the following three criteria are present on slit lamp examination with 90 diopter lens. Now the definition of clinically significant macular edema is important. So one criteria is thickening of retina at or within 500 microns from the center of the fovea. Second, hard exudate at or within 500 microns from the center of fovea associated with adjacent retinal thickening. Third, development of a zone of retinal thickening 1 disc diameter or larger in size, at least a part of which is within 1 disc diameter of the foveal center. So these are the three features which are seen in clinically significant macular edema. So if any one of the three features are present, it will be labeled as clinically significant macular edema and it will need treatment. Diabetic maculopathy. Clinicoangiographically, diabetic maculopathy can be classified into four types. Focal exudative maculopathy. It is characterized by microaneurysms, hemorrhages, macular edema, and hard exudates, which are usually arranged in a sarconate pattern. Fluorescein angiography reveals focal leakage with adequate macular perfusion. So it is focal in distribution. Second is diffuse exudative maculopathy. It is same thing, but it is involving the posterior pole diffusely. It is characterized by diffuse retinal edema and thickening throughout the posterior pole with relatively few hard exudates. Fluorescein angiography reveals diffuse leakage at the posterior pole. Ischemic maculopathy. It occurs due to microvascular blockage. Clinically, it is characterized by marked visual loss with macroaneurysms, hemorrhages, mild or no macular edema, and a few hard exudates. Fluorescein angiography shows areas of non-perfusion, which in early cases are in the form of enlargement of foveal avascular zone. Later on, areas of capillary dropouts are seen, and in advanced cases, precapillary arterioles are blocked. Mixed maculopathy. In it, combined features of ischemic and exudative maculopathy are present. Advanced diabetic eye disease. It is the end result of uncontrolled proliferative diabetic retinopathy. It is marked by complications such as persistent vitreous hemorrhage, tractional retinal detachment, and neovascular glaucoma. Investigations done in diabetes mellitus. Urine examination for sugar, blood sugar estimation, and fundus fluorescein angiography should be carried out to elucidate areas of neovascularization, leakage, and capillary non-perfusion. Management of diabetic retinopathy. Screening for diabetic retinopathy. To prevent visual loss occurring from diabetic retinopathy, a periodic follow-up is very important for a timely intervention. The recommendations for periodic fundus examination are as follows. Every year till there is no diabetic retinopathy or there is mild NPDR. So in cases of mild NPDR, we need to follow up every 1 year. Every 6 months in moderate NPDR. Every 3 months in severe NPDR, and every 2 months in PDR with no high risk characteristics. Management of diabetic retinopathy. So first was the screening protocol, second is the medical treatment. So most important is control of systemic risk factors like strict metabolic control of blood sugar, lipid reduction, control of associated anemia, and control of associated hypoproteinemia. Role of pharmacological modulation. Pharmacological inhibition of certain biochemical pathways involved in the pathogenesis of retinal changes in diabetes is being evaluated. These include protein kinase inhibitors, vascular endothelial growth factor inhibitors, aldose reductase and ACE inhibitors, and antioxidants such as vitamin E. Role of intravitreal steroids in reducing diabetic macular edema is also been stressed recently by following modes of administration. So either fluocinolone, which is a steroid, either intravitreal implant can be used or intravitreal injection of steroid can be used. Management of diabetic retinopathy. So apart from the screening protocol, medical management, third is the photocoagulation process, which is being done as a part of the management of diabetic retinopathy. And this is a mainstay in the treatment of diabetic retinopathy and maculopathy. So pan-retinal photocoagulation or macular lasers are the mainstay of treatment. So the type of laser which is used is either argon or diode laser. So we have two types of laser that we can do. One is macular photocoagulation and the other one is the pan-retinal photocoagulation or scatter laser. Now talking about macular photocoagulation, it is done only in cases of clinically significant macular edema. Laser treatment on macula is contraindicated in ischemic diabetic maculopathy. In patients with PDR associated with clinically significant macular edema, macular photocoagulation is done first, that is before PRP, since the latter may worsen macular edema. Macular photocoagulation can be done in two ways. It can either be given as a focal treatment or it can be given as a grid treatment. Focal treatment with argon laser is carried out for all lesions like microaneurysms, intraretinal microvascular abnormalities, or short capillary segments 500 to 3000 microns from the center of the macula, believed to be leaking and causing clinically significant macular edema. Spot size of 100 to 200 microns of 0.1 second duration is used. In grid treatment, laser burns are applied in the macular area for diffuse diabetic macular edema. Pan-retinal photocoagulation consists of 1200 to 1600 spots, each 500 micrometer in size and 0.1 second in duration. Laser burns are applied 2 to 3 disc areas from the center of the macula, extending peripherally to the equator. PRP basically destroys the ischemic retina, which is responsible for production of VEGF and hence neovascular tissue. This picture shows here, it's a computer simulation of grid laser photocoagulation for microedema in an eye with CRVO. So similar grid laser can also be done in cases of clinically significant macular edema. Indications of pan-retinal photocoagulation are PDR with high risk characteristics, neovascularization of the iris, severe NPDR associated with poor compliance for follow-up before cataract surgery or young capsulotomy, renal failure, one-eyed patient, and pregnancy. Now, surgical treatment. Now, there was a screening protocol, medical management, then photocoagulation, and fourth one is the surgical treatment. So in advanced cases of PDR, pars plana vitrectomy is indicated for dense persistent vitreous hemorrhage, tractional retinal detachment, epiretinal membranes, and retinal detachment. Hypertensive retinopathy. It refers to fundus changes occurring in patients suffering from systemic hypertension. Pathogenesis. There are three pathogenesis. One is vasoconstriction, arteriosclerotic changes, and increased vascular permeability. Vasoconstriction. The primary response of retinal arterioles to raised blood pressure is narrowing or vasoconstriction and is related to the severity of the hypertension. It occurs in pure form in young individuals but is affected by the pre-existing involutional sclerosis in older patients. So primary response of arterioles to blood pressure is vasoconstriction. That is one important point. Arteriosclerotic changes. It manifests in two forms, in arteriolar reflex changes and AV nipping, which results from the thickening of the vessel wall and are a reflection of the duration of hypertension. In older patients, arteriosclerotic changes may pre-exist due to involutional sclerosis. Increased vascular permeability results from hypoxia and is responsible for hemorrhages, exudates, and focal retinal edema. Hypertensive retinopathy. Clinically, hypertensive retinopathy may occur in four circumstances. Hypertension with involutional sclerosis. Here, hypertension occurs in elderly patients in presence of involutionary sclerosis. The fundus changes comprise augmented arteriosclerotic retinopathy. Hypertension without sclerosis. This is seen in young people where elastic retinal arterioles are exposed to raised blood pressure for a short duration. There are few retinal signs. The arterioles are constricted, pale, and straight with acute angled branching. There are minimal signs of AV crossing. Occasionally, small hemorrhages may be found. Exudates and papilledema are never seen. Hypertension with compensatory arteriolar sclerosis. It is seen in young patients with prolonged benign hypertension, usually associated with benign nephrosclerosis. The young arterioles respond by proliferative and fibrous changes in the media, which happens inside the blood vessel. So, compensatory arteriolar sclerosis. Advanced fundus changes in these patients have been described as albuminuric or renal retinopathy. Fourth one is malignant hypertension, which is an expression of its rapid progression to a serious degree in a patient with relative young arterioles undefended by fibrosis. The fundus picture is characterized by marked arteriolar narrowing, papilledema, retinal edema over the posterior pole, clusters of superficial flame-shaped hemorrhages, and an abundance of cotton wool spot. Keith and Wagner classification of hypertensive retinopathy. Grade 1. It will show mild generalized arteriolar attenuation, particularly of small branches, with broadening of the arteriolar light reflex and vein concealment. Grade 2. Marked generalized narrowing and focal attenuation of arterioles associated with deflection of veins at AV crossings. This is called Salus sign. Grade 3. Grade 3 is grade 2 changes plus copper wiring of arterioles, banking of veins distal to AV crossings, which is called bonnet sign, tapering of veins on either side of the crossings, which is called gun sign, and right angle deflection of veins, which is called Salus sign. Apart from this, there can be flame-shaped hemorrhages, cotton wool spots, and hard exudates. Grade 4 hypertensive retinopathy. This consists of all changes of grade 3 plus silver wiring of arterioles and papilledema. These pictures here shows copper wiring of arterioles, AV nicking. We can see some changes here at the arteriovenous crossing. There is a discontinuity here of the veins, then mild tortuosity of the vessels. Here in the first picture you see blot hemorrhages, cotton wool spots which are indicative of ischemia, arteriovenous nicking. There are hard exudates, disc edema, arteriolar narrowing is there, there's thinning of the arterioles, copper wiring of the arterioles are also seen. Thank you.